I would have said that everything that I'd ever done bad has already been turned into stand-up, but not this. This is something else. When I was 12 years old, and so in the second year of secondary school, I had a friend and rival called Tom. He was one of these kids who make everyone else in the class look a bit dim. He was the sort of student who knew the answer to everything and was eager to give the answer to everything. Whenever a question was asked, he put his hand up so far in the air, he was in danger of tipping off his chair. His particular forte was science subjects. While the rest of us were copying down sentences like, all movement requires energy, and staring blankly at them, he would be just tapping away on some amendments to the theory of relativity. He could also play the drums and various other musical instruments. He was good at sport. He was just one of those kids. It wouldn't entirely surprise me if he'd flown himself to school in a homemade helicopter or turned out to be able to talk to dogs in their own language. To make matters even worse, Tom was a really nice guy, so you couldn't even hate him for being so successful. At least I couldn't. In fact, we were good friends, and I used to sit next to him in class. I was the first one to see his test results come back with 10 out of 10 and a few ink smudges on the paper where his answer had been so good that it moved the teacher to tears. I would hang out at his house and see if his intelligence was a thing that I could somehow catch or steal, like he kept it all in a jar somewhere. I didn't begrudge Tom any of his success, but being his friend was a little bit like being the less pretty one in a pair of sisters. Then one freezing Tuesday afternoon, we were at games. Our games lessons took place on an exposed piece of land, so cheerless, so mercilessly lashed by the wind, that even the name of that area of Bristol still makes me shudder. You had to travel there on a bus, being taunted by the bigger boys, the ones who already somehow had moustaches, about the damage they were hoping to do to you when you got on the rugby pitch. And afterwards, you had to change back into your uniform in a dismal, icy pavilion, which had been built around the same time as Stonehenge. If you got changed too slowly, well, the bus would just go without you. You'd be stuck. You would probably die there. On this afternoon, I just could not get this mud-covered rugby boot off my foot. My hands were bright pink and it felt like 2 blocks of ice. The boot was just squirming around. I couldn't get a proper grip on it. The other kids were all nearly ready. They were teasing me. And since I couldn't remove the boot, I obviously couldn't get anywhere near addressing the problem of putting my trousers back on. So I was miserable, panicking. I heard the bus driver honk his horn outside. To the rescue came Tom. He grabbed the boot so hard the leg nearly came out of his socket. With no thought for how mucky his hands were getting, he yanked the boot off, helped me get the rest of my clothes on, and together the two of us legged it to the bus just before the permanently angry man called Derek drove it away and left us to fend for ourselves, just foraging for food for a week until games came round again. Now, only a few weeks after this, after another games lesson, Tom got beaten up. Gang of boys approached him with a view to kicking him very hard because in their view he was too intelligent and he needed to address the situation. Tom advanced a counter-argument which included a quote from Socrates, and that was the end of that. They knocked him over, took his school bag, kicked him over and over again, and I was there, but I did nothing. It wasn't that I didn't care. I was just scared. I was more feeble physically than him. I didn't know what to do. So I just watched him lying there with all these bullies menacing him, and I did not return the favour that he had done me so recently. Not that long ago, a couple of years ago, Tom and I got back in touch. He happened to be in Edinburgh, and we discussed the incident. And I realised during the conversation that he doesn't remember me being there. In his version of the story, I was already on the bus on my way back to school. So the whole time we were discussing it, I was like, yeah, I wish there was something I could have done, but it wasn't even there. So for all these years, and it must be about 25 years, he's thought that I was completely powerless, when actually I just bottled it. And so I want to confess to this quarter of a century of failure of friendship. As a postscript, as a result of that kicking, Tom started to bulk up a bit, got really good at rugby, of course he did, got into the school first team, ended up playing at Twickenham, and so I was jealous of him all over again.
All right, Mark Watson, round of applause, please, for his shocking tale of a betrayed friendship. That's very good. Joe, what do you say on the forgiveness front here?
Mark, did you have to think really hard when you were asked to do a confession? Were you like, oh God, there is something I could confess, but I really don't want to, but shall I? And did you beat yourself up and then ultimately we've made you do this?
Yes, that's a good summary, Joe.
Yeah.
Well, because the thing is, obviously, I could have lived for the rest of my life without Tom ever knowing
Exactly.
This feels. I know he does listen to radio too as well. So this is high wire stuff. But like when you've kept a secret for that long, you just. And I obviously assumed he knew all this time. It was only when we were talking about it and I realised he had a different mental version of the events. I thought I've been living a lie in his mind for a long time.
Well, I don't know whether to forgive you or not. I think because you've been very foolish and you've come on the radio and on national radio, I think I will forgive you because you obviously felt very, very bad indeed. So I'll forgive.
Okay.
Bobby, however,
Yeah, I'm conflicted on this as well because I know you, Mark, and you're a good human being. But
lovely.
I do wonder whether actually your friend knows, and what he's done is retold the story and protected you because he's a nicer person than you are. I think.
Savage.
I think so.
That's a game changer.
I think I understand the small boy in you that was terrified, so I'm going to forgive you, but not forgive you for saying, actually, you know what, I feel bad, I needed to own up to something. So you're forgiven and not forgiven.
Let's get an instant snap poll. If you forgive Mark, you cheer. If you don't forgive him, you boo, and you do it now.
well, it's like jeering, isn't it?
It's
like going back
this
to
is
the
basically
Roman
what being a
times.
stand-up is always like. Yeah.
Yeah, there's not too much of a lynch mob. I think you're basically going to get away with it. Does Tom have your phone number?
Yeah, he does. So we'll know in only a few minutes whether he heard this or
Do
not.
keep us updated. Do tell.